So as you all know, each month we invite a parishioner forward to reflect on his or her life of faith. This month's Katee Francies is going to give a reflection on how God has been present in her life.
Hi, my name is Katee Francies. I've been a parishioner since Labor Day, right before COVID. That means 2 years. I was born in Lake Orion, Michigan, as the second oldest of 4 girls. My father was a lifelong Catholic, and my mother was a convert. All my life, I heard stories of how my grandmother had been raised Catholic until age 9. At that time, my great-grandfather left the church because he witnessed a priest tossing back a penny an old woman had given in a collection. She said he vowed not to attend a church that didn't respect a small offering as well as a large one. I suspect the priest was trying to be kind to a poor woman, but my grandmother never went to church again in her life. The interesting part to me is that she raised her sons to be Catholic and told the girls to wait until they were married so they could be their husband's religion. This was during the Depression, so women had very few rights at that time. My mother talked about her need to have religion in her life. She lived in Pontiac, and she'd go downtown during high school where the Holy Rollers were holding services. She'd stand on a crate in the alley so she could witness the services inside. Then she met my father, who was a strong Catholic, and she was in heaven. She was the most dedicated convert in the church. We all attended St. Joseph Grade School in Lake Orion. We sat in the front row at every Mass. She cleaned the convent for the nuns and was the parish bookkeeper for the priests. She sang in the choir. I still have my father's prayer book and rosary that he carried through World War II. We were a Catholic family. I had my first communion and confirmation there. When I was 4, our family had its first miracle. My 2-year-old sister took my mother's thyroid medicine by mistake. She was unconscious in the hospital. Father came in to give her the last rites. When he made the final blessing, she projectile vomited and has been living a full life ever since. I and my sisters attended Dominican Academy in Oxford for high school. DA was on the grounds of the Oxford Dominicans Mother House, and my older sister entered the convent while I was in high school. I attended Nazareth College, an all-female college on the grounds of the Sisters of St. Joseph in Kalamazoo, Michigan. While I was there, I took a few courses on religions of the world and was fascinated by the similarities of many of the world's religions. I met my husband while in college. Pete attended Tri-State College in Angola, Indiana, and lived in the Newman Club with 12 other Catholic boys. My mother was thrilled. I found a Catholic boy. We were married at St. Joseph's in 1970 and moved to Fort Wayne, where he worked for Montgomery Wards as a manager. I became a social worker for the Red Cross and the service to military families at the end of the Vietnam War. Although we moved often with wards, we always managed to become active in our local church. Our daughter Carly was born in 72 while we lived in Napoleon. We moved to Niles in 74 and then South Bend. We settled in South Bend, and Pete and I became Eucharistic ministers in 1976. Carly attended grade school there, and I became a Browning leader as well as starting my master's degree at Indiana University at South Bend. I found a job as a counselor at the Rescue Mission in downtown South Bend. We also ran the Suicide Prevention Center. I had a lot of middle-of-the-night calls where we discussed God and his plan for depressed people who did not have the will to live. It was a unique job. It was run by a Mennonite who was kicked out of the Amish faith because of his alcoholism. We had a United Church of Christ psychologist and a pastor from a Methodist church on staff. I was the Catholic. The church service and dinner every night was put on by the local church, especially the Mennonites. I was slowly learning more and more about how other faiths and the Catholics are more alike than different. I then took a job at Madison Center, which was the community mental health center. In 1983, my son Kevin was born. When he was 1, we decided to move our family to Oxford. I was a certified addictions therapist, and there was a brand new state-of-the-art residential treatment center that opened up on the grounds of my old high school. It was unique in many ways. We had a former nun counselor who served as a spiritual advisor to patients. This was unheard of at the time in addictions treatment, but a core piece of recovery for our patients. I learned to blend spirituality into my counseling practice seamlessly. My daughter attended my old grade school at St. Joseph's, and soon Kevin was old enough to attend school there too. Pete and I continued our Eucharistic minister duties. We continued volunteering with Girl Scouts and then Cub and Boy Scouts through the parish. I continued my vocation of work in addictions, moving into outpatient jobs treating impaired health professionals, then treatment manager at Sacred Heart Rehab, then managing a detox unit in Lincoln Park. These experiences gave me insight into a lot of different ways to practice faith and to experience how others practice faith. Eventually, I moved into private practice with a group in Birmingham that was closer to home. A lot of therapists there were Jewish, and I gathered some more insight on how we were on similar paths. All of this exposure to faith was pivotal as I experienced trauma in my own life. My husband Pete was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2005. My mother had died in 1995, and my father died in 2008. In 2009, my 36-year-old daughter Carly suffered from multiple embolisms in both lungs. During our 23 hours in the ICU, I experienced many examples of God working in our lives. My friends came to support me and help take care of Pete. The hospital chaplain was the husband of a therapist I knew. Carly worked with a large group of Black men and women. They came in groups of 6 on shifts throughout the night to pray at her bedside and to hold my hand. They were of different faiths, but it didn't matter. My therapist friends took a collection, paid my office rent for 2 months, so I didn't have to worry about money. My friends in the Catholic community kept me going emotionally and spiritually. I started paying more attention to intuitive thoughts from my archangels. I began to learn that intuition is to be willing to hear the voice of your soul. Pete struggled with Alzheimer's until 2013. 2 months before his death, he became violent, and I realized I needed to place him in memory care. We had already decided on a place at the beginning of his illness, but as I struggled with the decision to place him, I clearly heard the voice of my daughter in my intuitive head stating, "Lourdes, Lourdes, Lourdes." I didn't know that the Catholic nursing home had a memory unit, but when I called, there was an unexplained opening for my husband there. He moved in and stayed for 2 months before he passed with a smile on his face. I believe his daughter came to escort him home. I continued to focus on my Irish roots, which tells me we are Catholic and mystics. As I looked at many world religions, I started to identify that we all have a foot in several worlds. We have a strong belief as Catholics in the communion of saints. I started looking at St. Teresa of Avila and reading John O'Donohue, a priest and an Irish mystic. We believe in miracles, not only water into wine, but everyday miracles. Somebody reaches out to say hi when we need it. There's an unexplained money when we have a need. I heard a talk on Father Sloanus Casey where the speaker said he was simply real. He allowed God to come into every nook and cranny of his life. I am allowing God to come into every nook and cranny of my life. The saints were ordinary people who were open to allowing God and the angels into their lives. I'm not a saint, just an ordinary person, but God has reached out to me to let me know he's there for me. For example, when I was on pilgrimage to the Holy Land with my former pastor, I experienced a miracle. We were having Mass on the hill above the Sea of Galilee. I felt the presence of my mother and my father and my husband and my daughter all around me. I started quietly crying. It was beautiful that they were in the Holy Land with me. Then I noticed that the 9 other pilgrims are crying also. Then I looked at Father Mike, who was crying as he consecrated the host. I apologized after Mass and said, "I'm sorry, Father Mike, but I was surrounded by parents, my husband, my daughter." He said, "It's okay. My deceased brother was with me through the consecration also." Since then, I've had many instances where God has touched my life in many mystical ways. Karl Rahner, a German Jesuit, says, "If you're not a mystic, you are nothing." I've been studying ways to increase my mystical intuition in helping others. I've always been a healing in my 50-plus years of practicing psychotherapy with my patients. But over the past 11 years, it's taken a growth into a more spiritual practice of helping people connect with their spiritual side, their conscious contact with God. I ask the angels and God every day to help me help others. I ask for their wisdom to flow through me so my ego doesn't get in the way. I've been exploring the connections between my Irish heritage and Native American healers called medicine men or shamans. The Celts had a reverence for spirit and all things in nature, much like our Native Americans, and many of the ancient pictographs are the same between the two cultures. As I've been looking at indigenous people throughout the world, they all had shamans to help them heal and explain God in their individual cultures. We are looking for ways to connect with God and seek the light. In September 2019, I moved to Adrian to be close to my son and daughter-in-law, hoping to help with any future grandchildren. Again, the Holy Spirit moved in my life. I asked God to help me leave my practice, my house where I had lived for 35 years, and a lifetime of good friends. I walked into Holy Family for my first Mass. Nancy McDade shook my hand, took me to coffee and donuts to meet you. Sharon Kinnell invited me to help on the rummage sale the next weekend, and I met many of you. The Holy Spirit continues to work in my life on a daily basis through this parish and all of you. Thank you for receiving me into this Spirit-filled community. And I leave you with a prayer from Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce Nation. If I could lay before you the dearest gift this morning, it would be a time of no beginning and no end. It would be a life filled with good health and peace and inner joy that can only come from the Spirit. You would quietly refine your thoughts and words so that you never draw to you anything but the finest. You would rest deeply and breathe in sweet peace. You would know the tremendous difference between the material and the spiritual, turning from anger and frustration to a safe haven of love. You would always be the most loyal friend, not to me, but to yourself. All the issue of life rise out of the heart, so this is a gift from heart to heart. I have expressed my heart to you. I have nothing to take back. Thank you for listening.